the real secret to a healthy aquarium. If you've ever had an aquarium, you already know the basics of keeping fish. But when it comes to plants, it's a whole different story. I believe 90% of your aquarium's success depends on understanding a few fundamentals that most people overlook. And that's exactly what we're going to cover today. Master these and you'll have the foundation for an aquarium that not only survives, but thrives. When we talk about a healthy aquarium, everything starts with nutrition. Plants are like any other living thing. They need food, and if they don't get it, they won't survive. In aquariums, nutrition comes from three main places: the soil you choose, liquid fertilizers, and in some cases, a CO2 injection system. The main nutrients plants need are first of all CO2, and then the macros, potassium, phosphorus, and nitrogen. These are called macronutrients because plants need them in higher quantities. Then you've got micronutrients, which are needed in smaller amounts but are still very important, especially iron. Most brands will sell macros and micros separately, usually in two bottles, and some even split the macros into individual bottles. It doesn't really matter which system you pick, as long as you are providing both macros and micros. Now, CO2, phosphorus, and nitrogen are naturally produced by waste in the aquarium, but unless you are building a very specific type of tank that's designed to be self-sustaining, you'll almost always need to add liquid fertilizer to keep your plants fed. A CO2 injection system isn't absolutely necessary, but it will determine the kind of plants you can grow. Some species simply won't thrive without higher levels of CO2. And finally, we have soil. Using an active substrate gives you more flexibility because it feeds plants right at the roots. That means you don't need to dump in as much liquid fertilizer, and in many cases, you'll see better coloration in your plants too. Soil lays the foundation, fertilizers keep everything balanced, and CO2 drives growth. Together, they form the base of a thriving planter aquarium. The next foundation of a healthy aquarium is water parameters. The main ones you need to know are pH, GH, KH, and temperature. If you keep fish, you already know what pH is. It's on every care sheet and product label out there. Now, GH and KH are measurements of the minerals in your water. I've talked about them in detail before, so I won't go too deep here. But here's what you should know. GH affects how well your shrimp and snails do, while KH affects how well your plants do. Plants generally prefer softer water, which means low KH. That's why active substrates are so useful, because they naturally lower KH over time. If your tap water runs high, that's one more reason to use an active substrate. If your water is missing minerals, you can easily boost GH and KH. Most brands sell boosters, sometimes even in the same container, and they give you clear instructions on how much to add to raise your levels by a certain amount. Just follow the directions on the bottle and you'll be good to go. The last parameter I want to mention here is temperature. This one doesn't get talked about enough, but it's very important for plant health and algae control. Try keeping your tank between 72 and 76 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a sweet spot where plants are happy, fish are comfortable, and algae is less likely to take over. If you go higher, you'll often start running into algae problems, and if you go lower, many tropical fish species won't be comfortable. If you are enjoying the video, remember to like and subscribe, and thank you so much to all of you who have been subscribing lately. A planted aquarium starts with lighting. The proper light means everything. It doesn't matter how good your soil is or how much fertilizer you add. If you don't have a light that's suitable for plant growth, your plants will never thrive. Light is the driving force behind photosynthesis, and without it, everything else falls apart. The first thing to look for in an aquarium light is the spectrum. Think of spectrum as the color your light uses. Plants need red, green, and blue light to grow properly, which is why so many aquarium lights are labeled RGB. Sometimes you'll see WRGB, which simply means they've added some white to make the light look brighter and more natural to your eyes. Once spectrum is covered, the next thing to think about is intensity. Intensity determines what kind of plants you can actually grow in your tank. With a high intensity light, you can keep almost anything, even the most demanding red plants. With lower intensity, you'll be limited to easy species like mosses, anubias, or ferns. If you're not sure how strong of a light you need, just drop a comment with the size of your aquarium and the plants you want to keep. I'll be happy to suggest the right light intensity for your setup. And if you're looking for healthy plants to add to your aquarium, check out my shop. Everything is grown underwater with CO2 and strong lighting. And right now, there's a buy two get one free deal on Richia Fluid Tanks. There's a link in the description if you want to take a look. Hardscape might not be absolutely necessary for plant health, but I think it's still very important, because if you're into planted aquariums, chances are you are also into aquascape, and a proper aquascape needs a solid hardscape structure as its foundation. The thing is, not all hardscape is the same, and it's important to know how it interacts with your tank. Many rocks would release minerals into the water. Serious stones is a great example, and it will raise GH and KH over time. Wood, on the other hand, often releases tannins, which can change the color of your water and make it look brownish. Tannins can also slowly lower pH, which might be helpful for soft water species, but it can be an issue if you weren't expecting it. These are all things to consider when choosing your hardscape, because what looks beautiful on day one might actually be influencing your water parameters in the background. But it's not just about the water, it's about the fish too. Bigger fish can sometimes wedge themselves into tight gaps between rocks and get stuck. And nervous species like Orosinclus might dart into hardscape when spooked, and if the edges are sharp, they can easily injure themselves. The trick is balance. You want hardscape that looks great, supports your aquascape vision, but is also safe for both your plants and your fish. So before you finalize your layout, think about how the rocks and wood you choose might affect your water and the fish you plan to keep. The last thing I want to talk about is filtration, and this is something that can make or break your aquarium. Ask yourself this: if you lost a fish right now, whether from illness, stress, or a parameter issue, what would happen to your tank? Would you see an ammonia spike? Or if a bunch of plants started to melt, would that throw everything out of balance? If the answer is yes, then you probably need better filtration. A while back, I lost a huge batch of Richia after a treatment went wrong. It was a lot of Richia, and I still added it back to the tank. You can see it here. It was a big mess, but here's the thing: I never had an ammonia spike, and within a month, the tank was full of Richia again. The only reason that worked out was because I had a strong filtration system that could handle emergencies like that. Now, beneficial bacteria grows everywhere in your aquarium, but not all surfaces are equal. The amount of bacteria living on your rocks will never compare to what can grow in a 3-inch layer of aquasoil. Not every setup can have that much aquasoil though. Maybe you're going for a thin layer of sand instead. In those cases, a canister filter is ideal, because most of your biological filtration will happen inside the canister, outside the tank. At the end of the day, the type of filtration you need depends on the setup you want, but always keep in mind, your filter shouldn't just handle your aquarium when it's at its best. It should also protect your tank when emergencies happen. These are the fundamentals that build the foundation of every healthy planter aquarium. Let me know in the comments which of these basics you focus on the most, or share the one thing that completely changed your aquascape.